First order of business is going to be welcoming our newest member. So Steve, I don't know if you wanted to give a brief introduction to yourself. I know we had the opportunity to talk, but for the benefit of the other committee members.
Hi, Steve Holland. Grew up in Framingham. My wife and I moved to Southborough in 2016. We're very happy with the town. We have a great neighborhood here. I was interested in joining the committee. I have a construction background, so really just wanted to help volunteer my time and my experience and see how I can help the town.
Great, thanks.
Welcome.
Any questions for Steve?
Yes. Welcome aboard, Steve.
Steve, do you have any questions for any of the current members before we move on?
Not yet.
Okay. Well,
I'm sure
don't hesitate as we go along.
I'm sure I will.
All right. Next item is approval of the meeting minutes from January 30th, 2023. These were drafted by Joe. Are there any questions, comments, or feedback for Joe?
I had one small thing on this. Sorry, on the section 3 approval of meeting minutes. The meeting minutes we approved, my understanding is they just conform with the select board, not the advisory board. So that's the only comment that I would have, is to remove reference to the advisory.
Done.
I agree with that. Any
Thanks,
other
Joe.
Any other comments, questions on those? Nicely done. There was a lot going on in that meeting, Joe, as we tried to get ready for town meeting. So nice job. All right, I will make a motion to approve those minutes with the one edit that was discussed. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Steve, I know you've watched our meetings, but we got to go around the horn and do a vote individually. So I will start with Jeff.
Aye.
Steve, you're messing me up alphabetically. You're next. And it's totally fine if you want to abstain too.
Abstain.
Okay. Joe?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. So that's a 501 vote. Chair and member update. Joe, I'm going to collapse Neary and Community Center together. So why don't you go first with the Shopsy subcommittee?
I am happy to announce that the subcommittee tomorrow morning should be voting on a finished draft to be submitted to the select board, and I believe the sentiment will be that we can distribute it to all the committees involved upon approval, but I'll wait for the committee to make a final approval about that. But the report will be going out, should be finished up tomorrow.
And do you have I assume the select board's going to have a discussion with you. Do you have a date for that, or you don't know yet?
I don't know yet. Tom will probably be the one, Tom Bishko will probably be the one doing the meeting with the select board. I don't know that the report should pretty much speak for itself. It's about 20 pages long plus exhibits. So
Okay.
it'll be a good read.
Okay.
And truthfully, he did a ton of the work. Just did all the writing for it. So he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Awesome. Look forward to that. I think there's a lot of questions about that building again. So I think it'll, from a community center perspective, which is kind of why I wanted you to go first. Okay. I'm going to combine Neary and community center. You'll kind of understand why in a second. There's a lot going on all of a sudden, very quickly. So we received what I'm going to call a 21-day letter from the MSBA, which is pretty much the final item that they require to bring it forward to the state board to move to the next process. Of course, they don't give you any warning when they're going to send it. So the 21-day letter arrived on March 15th. The Neary Building Committee is going to meet tomorrow night. The letter is primarily around the enrollment, that they're basically planning to do the studies around, like in the next stage when we go into feasibility, the enrollments that basically the town and MSBA have agreed to by grade moving forward. Of course, there could be fluctuations. You have a major development that's not in the works yet come along, that can, you know, happen along the way. But really just looking at the trends, they've come up with their own data. They've compared it with all the studies we did over the last couple of years. So we'll see where that goes. But here's the important part, and here's why I held the community center one to keep it combined. The superintendent and I have been discussing, kind of given my role on both committees, some of the feedback that's come on early on from the community center. And one of the things that is very clear, and if you, I would encourage you to at least watch the last meeting of the community center. I can find the exact date. Both Recreation, Council on Aging, and Library basically gave their, what I'll call, true pie in the sky wish list of like where they're kind of putting their stake in the ground of what they think they need in reaction to obviously the Woodward plan from last year. So what Greg and I have decided to do, and this is our last chance to do it, was we submitted a document to the MSBA to bring Finn into the equation. So basically the school administration continues to be very adamant about consolidating grades 2 through 5 into one facility, which would be whatever we do at Neary. However, leaving the door open for grades K and 1 to be at Woodward or Finn moving forward. So kind of giving us as a community a chance to further study both options as we move forward. And the main reason for that is the two main feedback points we've heard thus far is Woodward's your newest school. Why that, right? And we all know why like that originally came up. And two, the accessibility to Woodward. We heard a lot about it last year versus Finn, we all know, is on a very flat surface. So all this is doing is giving the town more options. The MSBA can say no, but we felt we would be remiss in our roles to not at least ask. So we expect the MSBA to take all of this up at their June board meeting now. As you remember from Joe's minutes we just approved, we thought it was going to be April, but we've been pushed to June. And that's really where it's at. The community center committee is meeting regularly now and has agreement from the select board to provide an initial report by the end of June with kind of the rest of the work being completed this year. I will tell you that in our 21-day letter from the MSBA, they were very clear on aligning around community support for consolidation of schools and what the buildings would be used for. So those two work streams are going to have to be kind of linked at the hip moving forward. But it's been very cordial and productive conversations thus far on the community center side. So I just said a lot. Any questions?
Jason, did you say kindergarten and first or just kindergarten? I think I misheard that.
K and 1.
What about pre-K?
I think that would be in
Okay.
the equation too. Yeah. Go ahead, Karen. You're on mute.
So bringing Finn into the equation, Jason, does that mean that there's some consideration that the community center might be at Finn? Okay, and that K to 1 would be at Woodward.
Correct. It'd be something we want to study. So all we're asking for is permission to study it.
Yeah.
Because we also need to be able to say to the community we've looked at all options, which is right now the MSBA's letter really was very specific to Woodward, which we get, right? That's what we've talked a lot about. But it was really our last opportunity without going to kind of like going back to the starting line on the process to kind of get this scenario on the table for further study.
Okay. And the library, the groups that you said that met recently, were they aware that the Finn school was back? No. Okay.
No, that happened this morning.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's a very live update.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeff?
So what would the next steps be in terms of feasibility at Finn, because we did that at Woodward, right? We had firm come in, they surveyed how the setup could look.
Mhm.
Is that gonna have to take place, or is that based on what happens in June? Are we going to wait for that?
I think it's gonna be two things, right? So on the NERI side, what would happen is the second the MSBA welcomes us into the feasibility study, we obviously have the money from last year's town meeting to go and hire an owner's project manager and an architect. So we would go and hire and start basically deciding which path we're going down: renovation, expansion, new construction at NERI. And then we'll obviously start getting costing data pretty quickly as part of that. If you have X number of students in a building, each student takes up X amount of square footage. You add an auditorium on, or a soccer field, or this or that. This is kind of your funding formula. That will be happening simultaneous with what the community center committee is going to do at the next meeting, is come up with a list of scenarios that we want to run. And I'm just like, I'm not going to give examples of them, because basically the homework exercise was for each respective group to come back with a scenario other than just you need your own building, to see, like, because right, the seniors had been paired with recreation for many years. All of a sudden that relationship has split a little bit, and the seniors want their own space, right? The library wanted one building, not two. They're not saying they have to have their own building though, which I think is an important distinction, right? Remember, so I think that group will come up with scenarios at the next meeting. Finn could now be on the table. It wasn't at the last meeting. And then we would be able to go from there. All right. I'm going to move on. Main reason I just wanted to convene this group before town meeting are the next two agenda items, 5 and 6. So we talked a lot about the athletic complex back in December. We had that really long meeting with the select board and advisory. There's a full presentation of it. And then in our January meeting, we took a unanimous vote. Obviously, Steve, you weren't part of that vote, to support the project. Since that time, two things have happened. Select board unanimously voted in favor of it. However, advisory, well, I don't think it was unanimous, defeated their recommendation. They are not recommending it. And the main reason for their recommendation is they want to push it out a year to further study CPA funding, so community preservation funding, and have a much greater contribution from that group to the project, as opposed to using straight general fund levy and having it come through our regional school assessment. The other item to note is, if you remember during the presentation, and I can pull up the hard numbers if anyone needs them, is the plan, the way the region has much greater liberties of how they assess the town than like any other department. And that's just the way regional agreements are formatted. But they're not planning to really assess the town other than interest for the next 3 years, such that there's only 1 year of overlap between the Algonquin building project, which was 20 years ago, and the proposed athletic complex for this year. So in FY27, that would be the only year there's like a double hit of 2 capital projects, as opposed to 3 years, right? So if this were to be approved on Saturday, none of us are going to see it in our tax bills next year, is basically the point, other than a small amount of interest. Same is true in 25, same is true in 26. And then the big project drops off in FY28. So we have those numbers, and I'm happy to pull them up if we need to. But the other really important thing is they actually have formal bids in for the project. So they've already gone out to bid. The bids came in wide ranging. I don't have the formal sheet, but my understanding, the bids ranged $2.5 million different between the low and highest bidder. So everyone's aware, in Massachusetts, you have to take the low bidder unless the reference checks don't work out. If we go with the low bidder, we are well within the budgetary guidance that they have been asking for all along, and would be able to achieve all the desired project impacts that they had previously stated, including all ad alternates, is my understanding from the superintendent. So if everyone had voted in favor of it, I probably wouldn't be discussing it, but I do think there's going to be a discussion on town meeting floor. While we all can individually have our views, and obviously we voted in favor of the project, I just don't know, we never talked about how strong everyone's views on whether this was the right time or not. If the committee is open to it, I'm happy to make a statement on behalf of Capital. Otherwise, we can make statements individually depending upon where the deliberations go through that. But I just felt it was important to bring it back here. And before I open up for questions, I just need Mark to fact check me that he's not aware of any other reason for the dissent other than the timing and trying to get the CPA surcharge up first before doing this project. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Okay. Okay. So does anyone have a strong view on kind of the advisory position versus, I'll call it the position that we took previously, and whether we think it's important for Capital to make a statement, given that we are essentially the ones that vet these projects the greatest from a debt, a bonding, a capital, how it phases in, or do we just want to let it be and react individually on town meeting floor? That's really the question on the table.
Well, sorry, go Jeff.
Oh, no, you can go, Joe. It's fine.
I was about to say, I'm for it this year and I'm for it next year. If they can guarantee that there's going to be enough CPA money to offset whatever cost increase might happen by waiting a year, then that's great. But, if we have a good bid and we can get the project in under what we expected, I would go ahead with it. I'm not at this point, what we've seen over the last bunch of years with the cost increases in construction and what could potentially happen. If we have a good bid, I'm comfortable to go with it and suffer the ramifications.
Good, Jeff.
Is Northborough gone yet for their town meeting today?
We'll go first. We're almost a month ahead of them.
Okay.
So we're going to set, right, if Southborough defeats it, I don't know. It would be up to the regional school committee to decide how next to proceed.
And how difficult is it to switch the funding source after?
You can't.
You can't? Okay.
So, and just a reminder, Southborough CPC is contributing. It's approximately $250K, and that's basically what was requested. So Southborough CPC committed what they could, based on their current funding, et cetera. And that would not require bonding either, which, if you remember from the townhouse project, was a concern that would tie up bonding capacity. This isn't going to even require bonding with the path they're going down from at least a CPA perspective. Good, Steve.
I just kind of piggybacking on what Joseph said is sometimes if you hold off something for a year and you go back to bid, the price does significantly increase. So we'll just put that, I'm just kind of putting that out there, that the bid you get today isn't the bid that you may get next year.
I'm also concerned that if we look at the bids we did get, right, which there were 4 of them, there was a $2.5 million swing between them, right? So, and my understanding is all 4 bidders are very reputable in this area of athletic complex construction. Go ahead, Tony.
So 4 bids, do you know what the numbers actually were? Like, were 3 closely coupled and 1 was much lower?
I do not have access to that. All I was told, it was a wide range between the number they were hoping for and the 10+ million. And that's just hard construction costs. Don't forget, didn't factor in architectural fees, OPM fees, and other, I'll call it, incidentals outside of the bid. Go ahead, Karen.
Do we know what the potential incremental CPA funds would be if we waited a year?
Mark, have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen any information on what those potential numbers would look like.
Thanks.
Okay, so I come back to, do we want to make a statement as capital that the plan is sound and it should proceed as planned, or do we just want to react individually? I just want to be ready if someone asks the question with how strongly we believe in terms of the timing and the cost based on the dissent that we're aware of. Oh, I see a lot of hands. Who, Steve, why don't you go first? It's
Is there an opportunity before we make the recommendation to review the bids to see what is included, maybe what's not included, what's excluded?
I'm trying to think. It really falls to the regional. This is one of the pros and cons, I guess. Like the regional school committees, the awarding, right? So they just need Southborough's authorization for the debt funding. But I could try to see what we get. We're just not going to be able to have a meeting before town meeting, which is fine. If we're not there as a committee, then I think we just speak as individuals, which is also perfectly acceptable. Go ahead, Jeff. A lot of hands went down in between there.
I'm good, thanks.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think, as I sort of iterated before, unless somebody's going to lay a lot more information on the table as to why we should be waiting, I have no interest in reversing my vote.
Okay. Does anyone feel differently than what Jeff just articulated? Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard for us to change our vote. I also think there's so much uncertainty that it's really hard to know what the right path forward is. So,
This is a path of certainty. Basically,
Sorry?
I guess what the regional school committee has already put forward is a path of certainty, right? They've given hard numbers, they have hard bids, they have a timeline that will be completed this summer, and we know what the cost is.
yes, so that's certain.
Right.
Waiting a year might have a smaller tax impact on Southborough on taxpayers, but you don't know.
Right.
And there's no way of knowing. So that's frankly, to me, that's a hard choice to make.
Okay. And also, the way I've been thinking about it is there's no shortage of other potential items in the capital plan that will be CPA eligible projects. I'm thinking like the Choate project. I'm thinking if we do fields as part of NERI, that could certainly be carved out because MSBA will not pay a penny for that. Just go down our capital plan. There's many CPA eligible projects. So I don't really think we're missing a crack at in that bat here. I think there's plenty other, even if the town does vote to increase the surcharge, which actually requires a ballot vote. It's not just go to town meeting and pass something. So it's a pretty tall task to even effectuate. Karen, do I see your hand up?
I had my hand up at one point. I just wanted to say that I'm in favor of the committee, given the potential controversy at town meeting between the select board and the advisory committee. I would be in favor of the CIPC committee taking a vote and a stand.
Okay. I'm going to read the estimated financial impact just because I pulled it up while we were sitting here. In FY24, this project in a silo will not impact a single Southborough household, $0 of impact, although it would be completed in FY24. So it'll be completed this summer. Every number I say from here on out is based on an average house value in Southborough of $901,000, right? So go up if you think your house is worth more, go down if you think your house is worth less. The impact to Southborough taxpayers in FY25 will be $29 a year. The impact in FY26 is $56 a year. The impact in FY27 is $88 a year. And the impact from FY28 through FY2038, which is the length of the bond, is $89 a year. Obviously, you have a little more shifts between residential and commercial during then, but that gives you the order of magnitude we're talking about. Okay. All right. So Karen, I heard your, does anyone disagree with what Karen and Joe have now said? Go ahead, Joe.
I should admit I might be a little bit biased. My daughter's going to be in high school.
We all you have had kids either go through the schools or will be going through the schools. I think that's just a natural product of living in a community with educational institutions.
I'll also admit she's not much of an athlete, so it probably won't
So
affect
that
her at all.
just took it all away. You know what I'll say though? This is beyond. They call it an athletic complex, right? There's an amphitheater in this project too. They've thought about things outside of like pure recreation in this project as well. And I also will say, like if you actually look at our capital policy as a town, the first thing it says is safety, right? Like, right. And we've seen the pictures, and I think they speak to the nature of what's going on. So, unless anyone thinks we need a motion on that, I think I have the direction on that. It's earlier on in the meeting. But I think everyone's also willing to and should get up if they feel like the debate is off base from where, any study you've done on the article. And Steve, I'll get you that information just from an educational perspective too. I realize it's tough coming in at the 11th hour on a project that's been discussed for quite a while now. Okay. In terms of the rest of town meeting, I am surely hoping I'm on the stage a lot less this year for the capital articles. As you remember, last year was pretty drawn out with Northborough Road. I would say I'm just going to read what we will be motioning in our article this year. Remember, the select board took most items that we recommended off and have actually already voted them and funded them through ARPA. So this is what remains. Road maintenance for $400,000 through the general fund. The sidewalk maintenance article, they only recommended 50. Remember, we recommended 100. Main reason for that is they do have slightly less than 50 available from a prior sidewalk article related to a development. So they view it as we actually will have 100 available. It's not exactly 100. I understand the philosophy, and I think it's a step in the right direction. So that's the one change they made to our recommendations. The library security cameras out of the general fund for $15,000, and police cruisers, 2 of them hybrids for $148,000, which are fully equipped. That's not just the vehicle. And then 3 things out of the ambulance fund: the fire durable medical equipment, ambulance power stretcher, 1 of them, and a portion of the fire PPE, because they received a gift for the other half that was actually committed last year already by one of the private schools. That's the appropriation articles. It's probably going to be the lowest ever capital budget from an appropriation perspective this town will see. And then the next article is separate because it's a bonding article, and it's related to the police and fire radios for $488,000. But remember, that's coming out of the ambulance fund and will be bonded. So there's no tax rate impact next year. It will just impact the amount that the ambulance fund can fund the general fund budget, moving forward. That's all that's on our plate from a capital perspective, other than the athletic complex, which comes shortly thereafter, but the regional schools are going to move that article. Any questions on that? Okay. A brief preview of where we're going to go after town meeting is tomorrow night, the select board are going to vote on a memo. It's in their packet. I got a pre-read of it, related to sidewalks and coming up with a sidewalk plan for the town for new, right? So that was a huge recommendation from the ARPA committee. So that will be one of our tasks moving forward. And we certainly are looking at obviously these building projects, and then have to shift our focus already to FY25 capital, which is not an easy year, as you all remember. Joe, that's where South Union is so important. Where we go with Neary, there's still a roof. Trotter needs a roof, right? There's just a bunch of things. So I think we're gonna need to get a head start there. So that's what we'll be going after town meeting. I'll kind of come back with a date on that. And then, so yeah, I'll pause there and see if there's any questions on that. I am seeing none. So I guess we'll wait for our directions there and come up with a plan. It's going to be unique. We've never done it before. No one's really ever done it. So we'll just need to kind of create a process from start to finish on that one. Is there any public comment? Okay. On other business, I know Karen just had something she wanted to share with the committee before we adjourn, so turn it to Karen.
Yeah, I just sent a note out to our committee, and I had told Jason last month that I would be resigning from the committee because we're selling our house actually this week. I think it goes on the market on Wednesday. And, I've really enjoyed serving on the committee with all of you and witnessing the positive impact that the committee has made. And I particularly thank Jason for his leadership of the committee. My only regret is that I didn't consider volunteering in town government until, the past, 2 or 3 years, I think I've been on the committee, because I've learned so much, and it's such a worthwhile thing to do. I wish I had gotten involved earlier. And Steve, I'm glad you're joining the committee to take my place.
We still have openings, so anyone that listens to this recording, we still have one opening, and we'll have 2 once your resignation takes effect. So, Karen, I guess on behalf of the committee, I would just thank you for everything in your contributions. You, for someone that didn't have that prior involvement in town government, really got up to speed quickly in my own assessment, and obviously added a different perspective that we didn't have. But I think we've been well educated moving forward, and I think your 2 hybrid cruisers are the perfect, summary motion to the end of your service. And obviously we'll miss you for some of these building projects, because I think that's another area that the town will probably be a first for the town in terms of how we focus on all of that. But I'm sure you'll be watching from afar, and I'm sure your new community would benefit from your service as well.
Thank you, Jason.
Go ahead, Tony.
So I've read that some towns are starting to name vehicles in various ways. I don't know if we should name a hybrid cruiser after Karen in some way.
A lot of them are sponsorship rights, Joe, by the way. So thank you, Karen. You'll be missed, and don't hesitate to reach out to Mark or Jim if you just need help processing the final steps there, and we'll miss you. And good luck with the sale.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, is there any other business that anyone wants to discuss? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. We need to do a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
And I am aye as well. It's unanimous. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.